Hi, this is Swapnil Bharti, and we are here at the SAP TechEd conference. Today we have with us Dan again. So just tell us, wrap the whole keynote today in context of open and open source.
Yeah, no, as we talked back at Cloud Foundry Summit, I think SAP realizes we can't do it all, Swapnil. So we have to be part of open source communities, and we have to be part with other partners, other customers, delivering cool things to the marketplace. And the way that open source is helping us, it's making our adoption faster, our innovation faster, and bringing more customers to the party for SAP. So it's really exciting. So yes, we opened with being open at the keynote.
Yeah, you opened
today.
the market by being open, right?
Exactly.
So the code to be a successful company is also open, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So how does it help in SAP's own transformation, as becoming more open to open source?
Yeah. So as you know, and I think we talked at the Cloud Foundry Summit, we're continuing on our open source projects with Cloud Foundry. We continue to increase the number of committers we have for Cloud Foundry, and we actually have 3 projects going. One with IBM, another with SUSE. We're building an open service broker API for Cloud Foundry. IBM is building a Kubernetes orchestration layer for Cloud Foundry, and SUSE is actually building Cloud Foundry on top of Kubernetes. So these 3 projects are going to bring Kubernetes and Cloud Foundry even closer together. So to have the containerization and orchestration of containers using best-of-breed Kubernetes, but best-of-breed developer experience with the Cloud Foundry. So that's something that we're very, very excited about. In addition, for Cloud Platform, we talked about Kubernetes and Knative and Kubeless today. And the way we're exposing those to our customers is through functions and events and backend as a service. So we took Kubernetes and Knative and Kubeless to help on deploying functions in an event-based system. So to the developer, what's cool is they don't have to know Knative, they don't have to know Kubeless, they don't have to know Kubernetes. We do that under the covers. They have to just know, I'm making this an enterprise messaging application, I'm going to use functions, and if I need a back-end persistent store, I just make a call to that. So we're making it very easy on that front. And then finally, we also announced Kubernetes as a service, where we're taking our open source project called Gardener, which is a way that we are going to manage on Cloud Platform very large clusters of Kubernetes containers. And we're allowing the customers just to deploy the containers, and we will manage the clusters through the Gardener project that's being exposed on SAP Cloud Platform. So a lot of open source stuff being driven through Cloud Platform.
Right, and I'm actually happy that instead of calling it serverless, you said functions. Why do you choose the term function as a service versus serverless?
Well, they're kind of mixed together, and I think there's some confusion in the market today. We do deliver these services in a serverless environment, meaning that the developer doesn't have to know the infrastructure underneath. They just say, I want to publish to a message server, and I want to take that message and I want to run a function against it, and I want to take a back-end service and put some data in there and call that as part of this application I'm writing, and then, by the way, just push that into the platform. That becomes a serverless piece. And then when we bill, we only bill for what's being used and consumed by that application. So from that standpoint, it's serverless.
Right.
We're trying to make it very, very easy for customers just to say, I pick an event,
right.
I pick write a function, I put this into a persistent data source. Very simple.
Yeah,
very
because
simple.
serverless is more or less a marketing term, which is also confusing.
Yeah.
There is actually a server in serverless.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Let's not go there because
I've been a server guy
right,
for 25
right.
years, and when I saw that marketing term,
Yeah.
serverless, it's too bad. What it should really be described as, is really maybe infrastructure at your service, maybe is a better way to think about it. Because that's what's really happening, is more of the responsibility for running these applications depends on the infrastructure vendor. So maybe infrastructure at your service would be better.
Yeah. And I also saw a lot of focus, and the theme could also be like it was machine learning and AI was at the center stage. So what work is being done in context of open source there? Because most of the machine learning frameworks and all those platforms are also open source.
Yeah, so we have our own AI and machine learning, and I think Bern talked about that we'll continue to enhance all of our application suite using AI and machine learning. But in addition to that, things like TensorFlow, where you want to build a model and do your testing data in TensorFlow, great, go ahead and do that. That's open source. Google provides a great platform for doing that. They've now got TensorFlow as a service as well. But once you've built your model, now bring that back into the application, and we can easily do that using Cloud Platform and the Data Hub product as well. So now you run your full scoring in the application system, but utilizing the models you built in TensorFlow. Right. So very cool.
Right. I'll just go back to the previous point of open source and your engagement with Gartner. You mentioned. What are the other projects that SAP is not just consuming, but either releasing as open source or being an active contributor to those projects?
Yeah. So I already talked about Gartner, which is our way to manage large clusters of Kubernetes servers, systems, containers. We also have a Keynote project, which is a way to build extensions very, very quickly. That's built on top of Knative that Google open sourced as well. So Keynote will be our open source for discovering and understanding how you do application extensions in a very lightweight way. And the way we will then commercialize that is take some of those best learnings from Kima and some of the best things we're doing in Kima, bringing that directly into SAP Cloud Platform. So that's another way, another project we've got underway. And then the way we are actually putting into the open source community, not just consuming, is we're now the second largest committer on Cloud Foundry. So Pivotal's number one, we are now by a long margin committer number two for the Cloud Foundry initiative. Right. And being part and parcel to what's going on with Knative. So not only consuming that, but contributing back to Knative, and with the Kima contributing a whole nother layer on top of Knative. So I think we're in open source big time.
Since we're talking about developers and open source, has the culture within SAP changed so that you are embracing open source? But it's not technology, it's culture also. People's mindset change. So can you talk about the internal culture at SAP now?
I'm going to answer it in actually two different ways. When I made my first trip back to Waldorf from California, so I'm a California guy, was in about 2013, 2014, I believe. And I was really surprised at how old the SAP community was in Waldorf. I was actually really surprised. As I go back there now more and more, I am pleasantly surprised that there's a much better mix of younger developers as well as some of our seasoned developers. I don't want to call them old, okay, but seasoned developers. And so I think the culture is definitely shifting at SAP, that we have to bring in both, we have to have IP that both we own, but also IP that's owned by open source. And I had a red face test with one of my colleagues in product marketing on this specific topic, on open source topics. And I said, do the guys in Waldorf really get that they can't build everything? I said, I'm not sure that they are. And he said, no, and let me tell you why. And he went through team after team after team that were utilizing open source capabilities so that we weren't trying to build everything ourselves. And if you look at the number of OEMs that we have for services on Cloud Platform, that is actually growing. Our enterprise messaging is an OEM of another company. Our cloud connectors, our open connectors are an OEM of another company. Our low-code development environment is an OEM of another company. So I think SAP's realization that we have to really embrace a lot of technologies, and we can't do it all ourselves. Not just in open source, but in areas where we don't have that specific expertise or IP, we're going outside and making it happen. And that's the only way SAP is going to survive.
Right. But as you are, changing your culture and embracing, have you come across any unique challenge? You did mention, that the old people, seasoned people versus seasoned people versus fresh blood.
Yeah.
So did you come across any challenges as well?
I think that was the big challenge we had to really overcome culturally. There was a mindset with the seasoned people that you could invent everything yourself, where some guy who's coming out of college or is 27 or 28 and they've been developing software for a while, they go to GitHub first.
Right.
What code snaps can I use to pull into my application? They expect to have code samples that are open source that are available to everybody, and they expect to contribute back those code samples. Right. So it really is a mind shift, a cultural change, and from what I've seen, we have really made that change from where we were 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, because these developers don't come and take your tools; they bring their tools with them.
They bring their own tools. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So we talked about some broad topics. Is there anything else that you're like, hey, we should have talked about that also?
I think the only other thing that I wanted to talk about with you. So we talked about the Kubernetes, Knative, Gardener, Kima work, all that's open source. I want to talk about something that's closed source, but that we're bringing forward to help our development community. So we've had this programming language called ABAP for forever. Okay, that's how we wrote our code. There's millions of ABAP developers out there. We have actually taken ABAP and implemented that inside of SAP Cloud Platform so that now ABAP developers can work in an agile environment, work in a new DevOps environment, work with a service-based environment, but still bring their ABAP skills forward. So while ABAP is our own closed programming language, we're bringing those guys and those skill sets and all of those developers into a new environment for them to now utilize DevOps, open source, agile-based type of development. And I think that's a great win for everybody. It's a win for SAP, it's a win for the ABAP guys, it's a win for customers who have a lot of ABAP code out there. I think that's something really interesting, even though it's not open source.
Yeah, so you're bringing them, you're modernizing them, bringing it to the modern world.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's good. And maybe one day it will be open source, we never know, right?
Exactly. Who knows?
Yeah,
right?
If you keep your
keep going. And to us, it really doesn't matter. If it's ABAP developers enriching applications, great. If it's Java developers enriching applications, great. If it's Node.js developers, we don't care. We wanted to give these guys an entree on or an on-ramp onto the platform as well.
Right. Perfect. So, I think now we have covered the whole broad topic, right?
Yeah.
And once again, thanks for having me here. Yeah. And thanks for coming to the show. And hopefully we'll see you again in the next show.
So, Neil, always great to chat with you. And you ask really great questions about what's really going on in the world. Really good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Neil. Good.